A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change, where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight, one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran. Donald J. Trump on his Truth Social, the bankrupt Truth Social, which is another platform you can go on. I don't suggest it. He posts enough that it's in the news. Over 60% of Americans believe that Trump, who's 79 years old, does not have a clear plan for the conflict. This is from MSN. 2/3 say the administration has not effectively outlined the United States' goals in the conflict. And 64% say that the administration has been changing what it says about these goals. So 2/3 to 3/4 of Americans think there wasn't a plan. They haven't effectively outlined any of the goals, and they have been changing their goals. So I wanted to start off with that. That is 64% disapprove of the president's handling of the situation with Iran. 61% disapprove of Trump's job rating overall. Other aspects, let's see, look at this consumer price index. We've got inflation's gone up 1% year over year. Gas prices are up, 63%. Yeah, you get it. Okay. So this podcast, so welcome to The Way Left. Here we are. A woke, progressive, liberal, myself, Brian Vitello. Go to YouTube, go to Spotify, at The Way Left BV on YouTube, The Way Left on Spotify. You can also go to the website, thewayleft.com, and you can email me. You'll find it on there, contact@thewayleft.com. Leave comments, blah, 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 blah. This pod, I don't even know what I'm going to name it. Got to talk about it. I think what I'm going to name it is Tariffs, Hungary, Canada, Australia, Iran, Pope Leo. Trump's winning. So Trump's winning. What does Trump's winning mean? For someone that supports liberalism, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the freedom to protest, a lot of the Bill of Rights, Trump is winning. It's just in the wrong direction. And I'm happy about that. This is a positive podcast. Sometimes I come off very negative. It's hard when you talk about the orange-ass clown and what he's doing. I think he might go down as the second, or actually the worst president, one of the top 3, and 2 of his presidencies would be included in that. But let's talk about how he's winning. So J.D. Vance this weekend went over and visited a guy named Viktor Orban. So Viktor Orban was the leader of Hungary. In 2010, so he used to be a Democrat. He lost to a populist. So a populist is someone that says he's going to be for the people, which is what Trump says. He's going to be for the people, right? It's populist movement, big wave, generally leans to the right. He was a Democrat or a liberal Democrat, had lost in the 90s, early 2000s, and decided he was going to become a populist. He is famous for quoting that their liberalism is dead and that illiberal democracy, or what I'll call Christian authoritarian nationalism, is the new vogue. And that was in 2010. That he said that in 2014. He won the election in 2010. So Orban went about changing the media, restricting rights. For example, that people that ran against him could not advertise. So J.D. Vance, the orange couch clown, went over to Hungary. And so we have been promoting Trump, Vance, and Marco Rubio have been saying that Viktor Orban is the best government in the EU. He's the only one that understands the EU. We've got to keep him in power. So let's go back to my first podcast. It's called Project 2025, The Road to Authoritarianism. I think that was the name of it. Look it up, Project 2025. And what it was about was Kevin Roberts and Project 2025, and also Vance made some comments in there, and Russell Vought, the OMB director. And Kevin Roberts was quoted as saying, Hungary is not just a standard, it is the example for the United States. Illiberal Christian nationalism, and I would throw in authoritarianism. That's what Kevin Roberts said. And this is the project that they've been following since the Orange Mad King, Orange Ascalon, has come in January of 2025. So they support Hungary. They want Hungary. CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee, the Heritage Foundation have all spent time in Budapest trying to figure out how they can take control of the media, how they can make elections look like they're false, and how they can take over Congress, and how they can go to unitary executive theory. These are all in line with Project 2025. They've been explicit and they've stated it. So recently, now Hungary's coming up on an election. They've been struggling financially pretty bad because essentially what Orban has done, which most populist authoritarians do, think Vladimir Putin, think a lot of the dictators, think of what Bolsonaro tried to do in Brazil, and that's another one we'll talk about winning. Think about what Trump's trying to do, right? He wants to do the deal on TikTok. He wants to do the deal TikTok to his friends. He wants the poly market and Kalshi, the prediction markets, to exist, even though they were illegalized. He wants to rip up agreements with Iran. He wants to do deals with Putin. He wants to take the embargoes off Putin. So Viktor Orban was basically a shill for Vladimir Putin. And it was proved out here in the recent months where his right-hand man in the military or in his cabinet was recorded talking to Lavrov, who is the ambassador for Russia, to basically promise him that they do all they can to promote Russia's interest against the EU. They literally said that. And now Hungary is in the EU, and is in NATO. Well, guess what happened? J.D. Vance shows up, talks about how great this guy is, and bam, he gets slaughtered. He actually called and said, you win, to Magyar. I think it's Peter Magyar, who actually came from Hungary's party, from Orban's party. Definitely conservative to the right. Orban took it all the way to the right, populist far right, illiberal Christian nationalism / authoritarianism. Orban's best friend, who was a plumber, is now the richest guy in Hungary. His family runs the media. It's the playbook. It's the Project 2025 playbook. It's the Machiavellian oligarchy playbook that the techno-fascists back, like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel's been to Hungary to promote illiberal democracy, the guy who's talking about the Antichrist. Magyar wins. Now, Magyar has a lot of those same policies, a little more conservative, but he's like, we got to get the corruption out, and we have to open up things like, freedom to protest, like LGBTQ could not protest there. Freedom to advertise. So when you go into an election, Magyar had to just walk door to door. He couldn't run ads in Hungary. Think about that. A person that was running for the premier or the president of a country was not allowed to advertise based on the policies that Orban put in. He wants to remake the courts because Orban put his men in. We'll see how it turns out. But we do know that Magyar isn't under the thumb of Vladimir Putin or Donald Trump. So Trump's winning for liberalism. Let's go to Canada. So Canada, prior to Trump winning in 2024 over Kamala Harris, was really close with Poilievre, who is a right-wing, big supporter of Trump in Canada. And this guy, Pierre Poilievre, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name, was way ahead in the polls. Everything was going to the populists. Well, Trump's out there talking, and he talks about Canada being the 51st state. Well, guess what happens? Mark Carney wins the election in Canada. And now, currently, they're redoing it. It's more like a parliamentary procedures like they do in the UK. They're actually going to take up the majority of their Congress or their parliament in Canada. So another win for Trump. We should say another win for liberalism. Thank you, Orange Ascalon. Mark Carney, a very educated man from the U.S., ran the Bank of England. I would say he is not a hardcore liberal, more of the center, but he has spoken against Donald Trump and MAGA, rightfully so, against people like Hungary, against the invasion of Iran, against shooting boats in the Atlantic Ocean, for fishermen doing double tap strikes and not even figuring out if they were actually pushing drugs out of Venezuela. There's another good win for liberalism. Australia. Albanese is the Labour Party, or what you would consider left or liberal in Australia. There's another guy named Pete Dutton. Pete Dutton was a big fan of Trump. Big, kind of tough guy, obviously white, tough guy, backing Trump. Well, guess what happens? Trump wins again. Labour Party, Albanese wins in Australia. So there's three of our, so Canada and Australia were two of our biggest allies in the world. Now remember, between Canada and the US, it's the least guarded division of nations, border in the world, but we're going to throw them under the bus and call them the 51st state. Well, thank you, Trump, because then you got the guy that we wanted elected. Now, it isn't about being Democrat. We wanted a middle of the road, or maybe a liberal who believes in liberalism, who doesn't believe in populism, and who doesn't believe in rampant corruption. Does corruption still exist on the left? Of course it does. Does it exist at the level that Trump's party is doing it? Absolutely not. Pope Leo, an American, born in America, born in Chicago, is now the Pope. I am not religious at all. I'm an atheist. Might even go further than that. Pope Leo has an 80% approval in America, and Donald Trump has a 37% approval in America. Now, Donald Trump has thrown Pope Leo under the bus, and supposedly they had a meeting. Pope Leo's cardinals or representatives came, and they threatened the Pope and said, you better get in line with us, because, you know what happened back in France in the 13th century where we took the Pope and killed him. I don't think they were going to kill Pope Leo, but they're trying to enforce that unitary executive theory that we are the ones that dictate. Pope Leo basically give him the Catholic middle finger, which I guess would be more like this, waving the hand instead of the big middle finger, which I'd have just given the middle finger. I think, a Catholic or Christian or Muslim or Jew can still put the middle finger up to fucking Christian authoritarian nationalists like the Orange Mad King. So in the meantime, Trump is throwing him under the bus, says he's for crime, that he's all these things, throws him under the bus. So does, and I'll get into J.D. Vance separately, throws him under the bus, and then posts a picture of himself, DJT as God, basically curing somebody. So as Jesus or God. So if I'm an evangelical, if I believe in Christianity, if I believe that Jesus was the Savior, or if I believe in the rights of religion in general. So let's remember the whole thing about the Abrahamic religions. First, there you're talking about the Old Testament, Judaism, the Talmud. There was no Jesus. It was Abraham and Moses and all that stuff, right? Then the New Testament, the Jews don't believe that Jesus was the Savior. Maybe a prophet wasn't the Savior, the Son of God. Then comes the Quran, and they believe in the Virgin Mary and Jesus, but the God Allah, or the God of Abraham, they still believe in Abraham and Moses. They believe he was a prophet. That's blasphemy, right? So if you're an evangelical and you believe in the foundation of the myths of the Old and New Testament, or even the Quran, which I call them myths because that's what they are. If you believe they're not myths, that's blasphemy. Per the 10 Commandments, you should be put to death. Now, I'm not saying put anybody to death, but how do you keep believing the bullshit coming out? Again, Trump's winning. It's backwards, but Trump's winning. Pope Leo has a high approval rating. Trump has a shitty approval rating. Pope Leo has more influence in the world, more and more, than the Orange Ass Clown or the Orange Mad King or the guy with the teeny hands and the teeny dick. That's our president. So there's another win for us. When I say us, shit, you can be conservative, you can be liberal, you can be a communist. For anybody that supports liberalism, for anybody that supports freedom of speech, for anybody that supports secularism, separation of church and state, and pluralism, where we really need more of that, more representative. For people that believe in rights. Iran, we're winning again here. I mean, back to the poll, right? Nobody believes the shit that's coming out of his mouth. We don't have any goals. The goalpost is moved. We don't have a plan. We fucked it up. We don't support it. Neither does the rest of the world. You think the poll numbers are bad here? They're even bad in Israel at this point. So Iran, so let's remember the Strait of Hormuz was open, and that's where they take 20% of the oil for the world and a lot of the Asian countries, including China. That strait that goes through the waterway from the Persian Gulf, where the oil tankers go out, was open. It's been open for years, forever. Now it's closed, or partially closed, or dictated. So we're winning there. So what we've done is we've decimated a lot of Iran. We've double tapped on a school and killed girls on accident. We destroyed their navy, except they still have navy ships. We destroyed all their weapons, but they still have weapons. We've destroyed their regime, and they have a change in regime, except now it's a more extreme regime. It's the son of the Ayatollah and the IRGC, which is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which are very radical. Some would consider they've definitely done terrorist activities. They're in power, so that's the new regime. That's like Delcy Rodriguez taking over from Maduro. So we won. We're winning. Now, because we had a 15-point plan that we put in front of them, and then Iran came back with a 5-point plan. They did some negotiations. Iran came back with a 10-point plan. This is back to the things are confusing because we have an orange ass clown running our country with a bunch of fucking yes men around him, like Pete Hegseth. I mean, anyway, the orange Pete Hegseth, the white supremacist who talks about prayers in meetings. We're winning in Iran. We're killing it. So they have mines all over, and now we're saying that we're going to close, we being the U.S., are going to close the strait completely until Iran says they're going to play along. Think that's going to work? You want to put Navy ships in the middle while they've got their drones? Sure. We're winning, Trump says. We've crushed them. We're winning. But we're going to blow up their whole civilization. So what does that mean? Trump is threatening basically nuclear catastrophe, destroying the whole civilization. So there were a lot of people out there on the right-wing side. Laura Loomer, the orange lipstick Loomer, Nancy Mace, even Tulsi Gabbard, who said Iran wasn't a threat. Now Iran is a threat. We're going to save all the women in Iran. Yeah. Clearly they have bad human rights in Iran. They have bad human rights a lot of places. Say Putin and Russia, Belarus, North Korea, China, Myanmar, half of Africa. So we're going to save all the women, but the guy that you back says we're going to destroy their entire civilization. That's a threat of nuclear annihilation or just annihilation in general, which is a war crime. We're going to threaten their bridges. We're going to threaten their energy infrastructure. But the world is learning. The Germans are saying, no, we're not going along with this. The Spanish are saying, we're not going along with this. Prime Minister of the UK, who's finally getting some balls, Keir Starmer, has actually compared Trump to Putin. You're damn right. Except just remember who's in charge. Vladimir Putin, not the orange ass clown. So we're winning in Iran. Now, I don't know if that's not good for us, like Trump winning in Hungary, where we got Magyar instead of Orban, or in Canada, or in Australia, or Pope Leo. We're not winning in Iran, and that's not good for left or right. It's a fucked up situation, an unplanned situation. After we said after the 12-day war a year ago that all things were good and we blew up their nuclear program. First he says he's not worried about the nuclear program. Now he's worried about the nuclear program. He's worried about the regime. Now he's not worried about the regime, or he is worried about it. We've had regime change, or that the Strait of Hormuz doesn't affect us because we have energy independence, even though the prices go up because it's a global market. But now we're worried about the Strait of Hormuz, and we don't want anybody's help or NATO, and we're not going to tell the EU or NATO before we bomb them. Then we're going to bitch that they didn't help us, even though Article 5 of NATO's agreement is only if a country is attacked. So, for example, NATO didn't help America in Vietnam. Guess why? Because we weren't attacked by Vietnam. NATO's Article 5 is to help countries when they're attacked. So after 9/11, when we were attacked, we went into Afghanistan, which I probably supported. Turned out at the level that they did it, I didn't like, but let's just say I was a supporter of that. They helped us. Now, Iraq, they helped us because there was this association, a nuclear bomb. That was a load of shit. I was against that from the beginning. I've talked about that, the marches in San Francisco against that. So again, Trump threw NATO under the bus, threw EU under the bus. J.D. Vance is throwing them both under the bus. Marco Rubio's throwing them under the bus. And all this time we're doing this Iran thing, guess who's negotiating on our behalf? Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. So in case you don't know, Jared Kushner does not work for the U.S. government, does not have top secret clearance, but is negotiating on our behalf. And he's already done deals with half the Gulf countries, and half those Gulf countries are like, what the fuck? But anyway, he is the son-in-law. He is married to Trump's daughter. And Jared Kushner's dad was a real estate magnate out of New Jersey and went to jail for felonies for all sorts of shit. Of course, Trump pardoned him. And now Jared Kushner's dad is the ambassador of France, but France kicked him out because he's a fucking idiot. So Jared Kushner is one of the negotiators. Steve Witkoff was a condo real estate developer for New York, a friend of Trump's, and now he's the negotiator in the Middle East and in Russia. And so is Kushner involved in this. I'm sure they have the nuclear minds for this. And then we're going to send J.D. Vance. So another win for America. J.D. Vance goes from Hungary supporting the Christian illiberal nationalist authoritarian Orban, who lost. We're winning. Flies to Islamabad and Pakistan because now they're involved, even though we don't have a really great relationship with Pakistan, some right, some wrong, who is a nuclear power. They're going to go there and negotiate. Guess they walked out of there because we told them that they can't have any uranium, not to even enrich for nuclear power plants, and that we should have control of the Strait of Hormuz and it should be open. And we're dictating, and we're not doing diplomacy, because that's not what populist Christian authoritarian nationalists do. They do not do diplomacy. They destroy. They try to affect change through bullying and intimidation. The world is not being bullied anymore, DJT. Trump's winning. Tariffs. Really won on that. That was Liberation Day last year in April. The stock market crashed about as quick as it had in, gosh, I don't know, maybe since the 20s, the 1920s. Of course, then he did what they called the taco. Trump always chickens out. The tariffs were put down by the Supreme Court. So again, Trump's winning. Now, he put in some limited tariffs after that, but we took down the tariffs that he did on personal basis against Canada, against all sorts of different countries. So Trump's winning. Trump's winning on the economy. The inflation's up 1% year over year from like 2.5 to 3.5. Where they want it to be is about 2.5 or less. The employment market is at zero. Trump's winning. The Democrats don't have to do anything but just sit back and watch this guy fucking destroy things. The problem is there's a danger in that. Now, you might win the election, but there might not be anything left. Trump's winning, but in the end, we all lose in some way, shape, or form. But at least we see some progress on some of these countries like Hungary, Canada, Australia. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but it's got to be better than being under the thumb of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin or Xi out of China or any of those, right? So Trump's winning, but Trump's not winning. Liberalism is winning. Liberalism is not going to die. It didn't die in Hungary with a guy who said that it was illiberal democracy that should survive. It didn't die in Canada from a guy who backed Trump, and then they called 51st state, and he tried to scandal, lost the election, rightfully so. In Australia, same thing. In Iran, we're all losing. Pope Leo, tariffs. I could go on and on about this. Trump's also winning by destroying the reputations, if they even had reputations, of J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. Now, J.D. Vance has converted to Catholicism. He said he's like a baby Jesus. Now he's converting. He's put out a book on Catholicism. Isn't that funny? Elon Musk has kind of done a switch. He has crosses on some of his X posts, so he must be a Christian. Peter Thiel's talking about Peter Thiel, the other techno-fascist, along with Curtis Yarvin, who loved Viktor Orban, loves Bukele, the dictator in El Salvador. speaks about the Antichrist. So J.D. Vance has gone the whole Christian route. He's gone the the whole he's gone to Catholicism, but he disagrees with the Pope Leo on a lot of things. You're allowed to have disagreements, but the throwing them under the bus and putting pictures of the man that you support looking like Jesus or looking like God, well, I don't think that's working. And if we look at regular polls, like I said, Trump is down to 37%. About 36% of that is MAGA. They're going to vote for Trump. The Epstein files could come out, which they're not all out, and the investigations could go on, and it could show Trump to be a full-out pedophile. MAGA would still support, because MAGA is bought into the cult. They only believe in that. They want an illiberal Christian authoritarian state that removes 100 million more people, less brown people. They don't care if it destroys the country because they're all going to fucking heaven when Armageddon comes. So Trump's winning. Again, go out and check YouTube at The Way Left BV. Go out and check Spotify. Leave some comments. Check out the website. Probably going to roll into Reels on Instagram, and I might even do some TikTok. People are pushing me to do that, so I might do that. We've got some more podcasts coming up. I'm going to do a little bit more than speak about the news, do some research and some interviews. So look forward to that. And feel good about the world in some way, shape, or form. There is movement. The populist movement seems to be dying off. The old Brexit, where it destroyed the UK, and it has turned down their economy by about 8% because they wanted to get away from everything. And now they're literally an island left on itself. They're pretty much begging to get back into the EU. Think about the middle powers, like Carney talks about out of Canada. America should participate in the middle powers, should participate in organizations like NATO. Maybe we overfunded it. I get it, but we get a lot of benefits. So Trump's winning. He's making liberalism popular again. I'll never say thank you to the Orange Mad King, but keep your post up. It seems to be working, just not in the direction you think, you orange fucking clown. And thank you for listening to this episode of The Way Left.